Sorry about that. My name is Jonathan Tao. I'm the founder and creative director of Parade Animation, and today we're going to bring you the behind the scenes of our newest project, Mother of Pearl, together with our partners, Placebo Digital Fashion House. So, without further ado, let's get it going. All right, welcome to the live stream. So I'm very excited to talk about our newest project, Mother of Pearl. This is a collaboration with a digital fashion house, and we're going to explain exactly what that means. But in the core of it, we decided to join forces and make a collaboration between VR and digital fashion. Now, fashion to me was very close to my creative side for a long time, but I've never it's always been like something that I took inspiration from for my character designs. It was always in my sketches and always just like a big thing that I drew inspiration out of, especially when I worked on music videos, such as what I did for my third color arts film. It was called Nightmare in the Morning. It was about this diva character, and it was like this big, extravagant music video. And there I really realized that I loved using that material, using that inspiration from fashion to create interesting silhouettes and color combinations, and to tackle character design from a different space instead of only looking within animation. So when I worked on that project, I realized I had so much fun trying to combine those two things, animation and fashion per se. And that character is like probably my favorite out of everything I've ever done. Then, as you all know, in December of 2020, we released Lifetime Achievement, our first project, and that was a VR experience with a character who's a fashion designer. And the whole inspiration behind it, we talked about it in our last live stream, was from when I went to Dover Street Market. It's a really nice fashion shop in London and in other locations around the world. And when I walked around it, I was just like mind blown by the design there and the way they presented fashion. And to me, that was very much beyond going to a store. It was a huge experience, because when you walk around the store, they put together those like almost art installations that you walk through, and it tells a way bigger story. And when you look at the fashion, it is almost like living in its own world instead of being isolated on clean shelves and hangers in a store. So I love that idea. I really wanted to incorporate that. When we worked on Lifetime Achievement, Albert, the main character, obviously was a huge anchor point as a fashion designer, and his store was very much about creating this like experience when you walk in and you feel small and everything is larger than life, and you really want to walk around, even though we haven't had a part when you can actually walk around maybe in the future, and you can enjoy it more than just like the clothes. You enjoy an experience. Also, while designing Albert, I had so much fun just like playing with his character and what you can do with him, changing different costumes every time we change a scene. And I still, after Lifetime Achievement, I still had that hunger to create within that space and just getting deeper into what, from my little nerdy animator perspective of fashion was. But I wasn't pretentious enough to do it on my own because I have a lot of respect to that craft. I know that fashion is something that people, obviously, like we do in animation, they invest their whole lives in. So if I don't, go and learn study animation, study fashion myself, then I need someone by my side who's an expert that can, give me that other side of things. So last summer, or last spring, actually, almost a year ago, I stumbled upon the work of Placebo. Now, a year ago, that was even newer, all the subject of digital fashion. Even more than now, no one knew what it meant, but I've heard about it. I've heard, about things around it, and I was super, super curious about it. And I remember I was about to be hosted in this podcast, and I wanted to know what the questions would be, and I wanted to listen to a few guests before me in the podcast. So I saw that someone in there named Roy Derry was a fashion designer that has their own brand of digital fashion. And I listened to the podcast. I was fascinated. I just wanted to reach out to him and just pick his brain and exchange ideas. And that's what we did. He was also Israeli, so it was convenient. He was also in Israel. You're going to meet him later, so I'm not going to introduce him completely. But that was when we started collaborating. And at the beginning, it was very blue sky. We didn't know what we were doing or how this collaboration would look like. And Roy watched Lifetime Achievement, and he was like, okay, I'm mind blown. Like, my life is split into two before and after this experience in VR. Like, he wasn't used to, seeing content in VR. And he said, okay, we got to do something. But his concern was, and if you look at his designs, they're very complicated. So the models are very fleshed out. The materials are very pronounced. You have textures, you have details. So taking something like that, with the language of Quill looked very challenging. And he expressed that to me. He said, I don't know how that translates, because especially looking at Lifetime Achievement, the style is very simple. And it's very just going very graphically, and it doesn't go deeper into those details that you have in digital fashion, and that's also the beauty of it. So I listened, and I was like, okay, how do I answer to this note? And so I took this design, and I went back to Quill, and I said, okay, how can I recreate this in Quill? And that's what I did. So this is a Quill model based on what you saw before. And it gets pretty close. It gets pretty close to the original. And then when we saw that, he was like, okay, we can talk. There is potential here. And we've always been very self-conscious about how user is gonna perceive those images. And if we said we wanted to release a collection of digital fashion clothes, and we wanted to recreate them in Quill to animate them. So how do we make sure it looks close enough, almost identical in Quill, so when they buy those clothes, they know how they're going to look like, and there isn't a bigger difference that they're going to struggle with, making the translation in their minds. So we had to make sure the models look fairly close with their Quill versions. Now, this is all technical, but going back to the story of this experience, we were like, how do we present digital fashion in VR? And when we saw Lifetime Achievement, he agreed with me. We have a very good vehicle. We have a character who's a fashion designer that we can reuse, and we can continue his story. Albert has a very flashed out backstory, so why not taking this character and bring him back to life to present this fashion collection? That was the beginning of the idea of what it would be, the experience. And we said, okay, we're gonna create an experience where Albert is releasing a digital fashion collection. How do we make it really, really cool in VR? And as inspirations, we looked at a few examples of spaces that were modular and that could maybe change, and we can play with lighting and the way they're structured. And we said, okay, this is fun and this is good, but this is also not enough. And we're in VR. We want to make a better use of the space. Meaning, if we have a fashion store, a fashion boutique that does the same thing in real life, that's just not enough to recreate it in VR. We want an experience that defies what's possible. And the first idea we had was like a step further, which was, we're gonna create a big narrow tube, and the user is gonna be in the middle here next to Albert C in the bottom. And then we're gonna have an elevator that goes up and reveals those different rooms, and you go through those rooms, and in every room you're gonna have a few items of the collection. And so the change is gonna come from the movement, and that's something that doesn't happen in real life, and it doesn't happen in a store the way those items are revealed. And we can play with just the different rooms, and each one is going to look different, and the transitions are going to be really cool. The experience of being on this elevator is going to be really fun in VR. And then you go all the way up, and Albert sees you again there, and then you have the option to actually buy the collection, to purchase the items. And so we were there. We said, this is okay, but this is still not enough. We wanted to take it a step further. We're in VR. We want to make an experience that's exclusively possible in VR. And while thinking and brainstorming about the concept further, we also came up with what would be eventually the collection. I played around with just my fun designs for the sake of them. This was just a picture of me, and I photoshopped designs over it just for the sake of it, taking some elements from Lifetime. But then again, I'm not a fashion designer. So when Rory showed me the actual sketches from Placebo, I was really mind blown. I thought this was like the coolest thing. And this is how it looks before it becomes like an actual 3D model. Rory is going to explain more about that in a bit. But I saw those designs. I thought they were awesome. And somehow all of them said underwater. A lot of elements here, whether Rory meant it like in the first place or not, because he actually took a lot of elements from Lifetime, such as like the color palette, and kind of like blended into the sketches, but it took its own identity and own like turn. So if you can see like the wave on the suit and the garment next to it kind of looks like a lobster. A lot of it just felt like underwater. So we're like, okay, underwater is great. Underwater actually helps us why not making the entire experience underwater? This is something we can't do in real life. We don't have underwater runways, so great, let's take it there. And so we started designing, or I started designing the stage. I took inspiration from other underwater images, and I kept in mind the color palette that we used. And I just looked at them and played around with different design elements that can create the environment. And so I kind of like put them aside as reference and started making some combinations of them until I landed on this stage. So we knew this is going to be the main stage and everything is going to happen around it. We have a mannequin in the middle, and we have the corals like going outside, and it has this like striking image that we can play with. And so great, this is getting there. But this is not enough. We're Parade. Where is the storytelling? So we wanted to take it a step further. We knew there was Albert. We knew it was underwater. We knew like everything is going to be really cool. But we wanted to just have one little further push. And with all the underwater idea, we said, okay, how do we incorporate the idea of the partners that we have at Placebo, and we give them a better stage, because Albert is ours, Albert is Parade. Why not having a character that represents Placebo? And that's basically how we landed on the actual concept for the experience. So we said, okay, the placebos, which look exactly like the logo of Placebo, are little underwater creatures. And this is the story. Albert goes on an adventure, as he does, and he meets those little underwater creatures. And then he realizes that they are the tailors of the underwater world, and they can create beautiful garments, and usually those garments are meant for fish and sea creatures, but together with Albert, they create a fashion collection that's actually meant for people. And so we said, okay, this is good. We have storytelling, because we really wanted to make sure that it's not just like an experience or like a fashion show that is solely meant for selling garments. We wanted to make sure that this goes hand in hand with who Albert is as a character, and it has its own backstory that's like interesting enough to be an experience in and of itself. And so once we had that concept in mind, we knew that we can actually go ahead and execute the thing. And as I played with Quill and started creating the models and setting up the stage and the ground for animation, we and the team at Placebo worked on the actual collection. Now, this is a great opportunity because we really wanted to bring Roy in and let him speak on the digital fashion side, because this is something that I know none of us has seen before. So Roy, take over.
So hello everyone, my name is Roy. I'm the founder and creative director of Placebo Digital Fashion House. And before we will even go into what does it mean digital fashion, how did we work with Parade and with Jonathan about this project, I will actually start to introduce myself. So if we can go first with the video, Guru, the first video that we made.
My relationship with fashion started as a kid, when I used to take comic books and copy the characters with new clothes by using baking sheet paper. 20 years after, I found myself studying in Shankar College, doing my graduation project, exploring new ways to be creative, new ways to create fashion. There is so much fear involved in the process of design. Fear from the limitation that reality provides, fear from not being able to meet my expectations, and fear from not being able to execute the design that I have in my mind. But working with computer always felt natural. It feels safe and powerful to be in front of the screen. With time, I developed my own craftsmanship. Instead of attached pieces of fabric, I learned how to attach mesh pieces. When I'm working with 3D, I feel free to create my own space. It's my escapism, a place where everything is possible, a space that gravity and the rules of reality does not apply on, a space when fabrics change texture and colors in one click. It's a magical space where beads and rhinestones can float in the air and attach themselves onto soft silky organza. A space you control on the wind, the light, and the pressure, and testing how those will affect the garment. You can be playful, you can be serious, or you can go wild. I can express myself in this space, making the garment, changing the light, find the right position, and bringing this garment to reality, serving a fashionable placebo effect. I love it because it's playing with people's minds. I love the reactions and I love the doubts. I love the process and I love the result. It's a revolution, it's environmentally friendly, it's the future.
All right, so basically was a really short introduction about myself. My journey of placebo actually started of me being an artist and talking and trying to explore the area of digital fashion and 3D. This is my graduation project. In 2016, H&M came to the fashion show in Tel Aviv and asked me if I can come with them to Stockholm and to be one of their designers. So 2016, I moved to Stockholm. And since then, I'm working in the physical fashion industry. But 1 year after I actually already work with H&M, I'm starting to explore 3D and how I can use 3D and apply it on fashion. And that's how I felt in love with it. And I started my journey to found Placebo, that today is it's a big fashion house. We already have a team between 7 to 10 people that's working in this fashion house. We took part in the Centraland Fashion Week. We're creating new collection, and we actually collaborate with different brands as H&M and more brands and more projects that are going to come very soon. We always create fashion that is ageless, sizeless, and genderless, because if we're talking about the metaverse and the digital platform, the talk around identity is very going hand by hand with fashion, because fashion in the end, it's all about identity. It's to create a character. Me and Jonathan, as Jonathan mentioned, Jonathan reached out, we talked a lot, and we definitely had to do something together. And I will say the most interesting things for us as a digital fashion house is to see the crossing between different platforms, because again, if we're going back to talk about metaverse, I think what's make assets, digital assets, very interesting is how you can move them from one platform, one metaverse to another metaverse, and actually how they're going to be adjust, how they're going to be changed, because every platform have their own polygon count you need to take in consideration, the rendering power that you need to take in consideration. And those things are actually what make digital fashion so interesting. Of course, we saw the video of Lifetime Achievement of Parade before that, and we were very inspired. But a lot of things that look very wavy and very organic. So naturally, and even like the seashell over here. So naturally, we went to the place of the ocean, and this is actually how we start to design. In our fashion house, I'm always make the first sketch, very schematic. This is the way that I'm doing fashion illustrations. Most of them are actually, and this is very generous with the details. Most of the time, I'm just doing things with squares and circles. And then we go into a design meeting, and then we're starting to go into the details. And I would say what is very interesting in Placebo that all of us came from the physical fashion industries and we know how to create digital fashion. So we very understand the language around fashion. What does it mean? Pokering, top stitching. How can we create a very quilt effect or the structure of a very tailored suit? So, and that's what makes the conversation very interesting, and the garments to have a rich language of fashion details. We create a layout of the collection, how many things, how we're going to separate some of the items. And I don't know if you know, but we actually create one very special garment for a pet that you can dress your pet. So we create these 5 looks, and 4 of them are actually in the video. And this is the final renders of the collections, as Jonathan mentioned. And I hope you will be able to go into Instagram and social media and to see, because I think what's very special about this collection is that we actually took a lot of inspiration for different choral details and the organic wave movement. We try everything to look very floaty. It was very important for us that people that will wear it actually will take part of the world that parade create. This is how you actually wear the garments, because in the end, those are CGI. Who doesn't know what does it mean, CGI, computer generated image? In the end, you send a picture, you get it back, and then you wear it. So basically, digital fashion today uses content. What we actually doing in our fashion house is that we're creating fashionable content. So you can wear it on social media, and those pictures, most of the time, let me tell you, people stop much more than 3 seconds when they're scrolling down on Instagram, because in the end, we consume fashion today as content. People buy Gucci shoes, Balenciaga garments to take a picture with them. So we will say, you know what? Maybe this is not the most sustainable way to create fashionable content. We can create it for you in a much more sustainable way, and we can even create something that's bigger than reality. And of course, we did create some photorealistic animations as well for each of the garments, just to make sure that people can see how it's created. And this is very parallel to the way that Jonathan and his team created around is how the placebos create the garment. So we took it in a different path. And one more thing that was very important for us is that we are actually partners with Snapchat. So we are part of their networking. So we created with them an AR option of a unique garments of this collection that people can actually use in Snapchat. So if you will go to one of a parade or our Instagram profile, you will have a link to over there, and from there you can take it into this filter on Snapchat, and you can use it yourself and wear it and put it on social media, and it's for free. And that's basically about this collection. It was very, very interesting process for us just to understand how you can take photorealistic garment and use them in different platforms, and to adjust from the beginning to understand how Quill work, because we are not working with this app, and to understand how you can create things over there, and to design the garment around what the features that Quill can provide for you. So it was very interesting process for us from our side as a fashion designers. That's basically it.
So this is the final render of Roy's collection. And as you can see, it's very flashed out. Everything looks like it's actual fabrics and materials and vinyl, and all the materials look, like real life materials. And you have lighting, and you have this nice rendering. Roy also made those even more elaborate renders for the collection. And when I saw that, I was like, oh my God, we actually need to take those and somehow make quilt versions of those. And with all my fear, I went ahead and tried to tackle them. I basically just took a front and side and all the other directions pictures and matched them in Quill, and then I created those models. So on the left, you're gonna see the render from Placebo, and on the right, this is the result in Quill. So obviously, it doesn't go as deep as a 3D model, but this is actually animatable in Quill, and that was the important thing. We tried to get as close as possible. Some of the elements were super challenging. As you can see, like every single piece here, every single garment has its own challenges, especially like with the ruffles here to really match the shape. We tried to recreate the materials and have some, shine on them. And so we wanted to hit like a sweet spot between close to the original designs and animatable. With all that, those models are still very heavy. So it's not, if I wanted to create, an entire experience with those models, probably I wouldn't have been able to. But this was the sweet spot, and I think this worked for a 6-minute experience. And so when we had the final Quill versions of the collection, we were like, okay, how do we animate this in the coolest, funnest way possible? And we went to this. It's the reference from Sleeping Beauty. And this is basically the fairies designing Aurora's dress. What we really wanted to create is like this super magical feeling of how those garments are being created by the placebos. We wanted everything to just feel like it's actually being made in front of their eyes. We wanted to see the little threads, and we wanted the way that the garments are created to be believable. And so every step of the way actually had to make sense. Every jacket, every sleeve, everything has to be constructed in a way that does make sense. And the shapes of the collection really inspired the way the garments are being created. So I have like a test and a key animation. It's actually a little further than keys, but you'll see this is totally like stripped animation of placebos creating some of the garments. This is actually that was so much fun to make, because it's like a puzzle. It's like you try to solve how to construct something. It's not really the way it would be constructed in fashion, obviously, but it's like a creative take on how it would look like. And I try to think like shape-wise and symmetry-wise and time-wise, like how long every part of it would take to actually, like be created. Credit to amazing Tyler here for fleshing out those scenes. Turned out pretty nice. This is and this is a key animation that's like a little more crude of another one. We also wanted to make sure that there is not too much repetition, that every single garment has its own way to be created, and after we had all the animation and everything was fleshed out, the final timing was actually determined by the music. So we worked on the music simultaneously in the same time. And when I got the track, which like I was mind blown by, we knew that we would have 4 segments for each garment, but I didn't know how. Like I knew the length like approximately, but not really. But what I did eventually was I took every segment and I timed the placebo animation to the music, to the beats. Everything had to be like on beat as if it was a music video. Then another thing that was very much inspired by music was lighting. The way it was, basically I started with the animation with no lighting at all. I timed the animation to the music, and then these were my initial drafts for lighting. So this was done in Photoshop, and I just tried to play with what's possible with the stage. I knew that the stage is going to be the same always, but just like in real life, I wanted to be able to switch it up, like you have in concerts. You have the same elements, but you can play with lighting and you can make different elements more pronounced, and everything is changeable within the range of those elements. And there were a lot of elements. So all of these different things, the walls, the gate, the stage itself, the floor, the choral, every single one of them had its own cycles and own little like lighting that's unique to every part of the runway show. So everything could work together, but it all had its own like kick that it does during each part. That was a lot of fun to make because it was just very spontaneous. I had like some presets, but it was very much about just like listening to the music and thinking like what fits best here. And if you really go into it, then you can hear that different musical elements have complementary visual cues in the stage. So that was probably one of my favorite parts in the project. So let me play out a part that's finished but not in VR. Oh wait, you don't hear the music, but yeah. All right, so you just saw how the 2 side corals grow with time, and the organic pieces here around the gate were the only things that were allowed to physically make a huge change through the runway. The reason why was that this whole concept was based on the same rules that we had for lifetime achievement. So lifetime achievement was actually very grounded in its have actual cuts. We didn't have like the transitions were the cuts, but it was coming from the story. It was coming from Abel using his magic earring to teleport from one place to another, but it wasn't a cut per se. We also wanted to make sure that the audience is the one that goes with their eyes through the part that they needed to go through. So we kept the same logic in this one, and I can show you, like, this was actually really interesting, especially for quill creators, because you can really try out things and see how people react to it. And things that I took for granted at the beginning, I discovered, where what might have been false. For example, something that's really interesting to me, if you remember in the experience, there is a part when Albert shows you the background story, and so you were at one point in the first 40 seconds, but then he stands here and he waves at you and he says, come closer. Now, a lot of people, when I tried it out on people, a lot of people start to take a step forward, and they want to start walking forward because he's asking them to come over. Then the camera comes in and brings them closer to the screen. But in hindsight, I think that maybe I would have not have him come over, because that's what triggers people to try to actually reach out and walk over. And in Lifetime, it worked better because what we did is we made sure that when you're in the first scene, you look at Albert and he basically teleports around the store, and you got to start changing your perspective and changing your viewport. And as a new viewer, I think that was more comfortable for a first experience, because you're very much guided to look to another direction. And here you spend the whole first 40 seconds without having to make an active shift in your perspective. And so I think that's critical for if you want to have the audience change their perspective later in the experience. I think this is something that has to be established very soon as you start, and very slowly. For example, when Albert later flies up on his shell spaceship, at the beginning it was very, very quick and people didn't get it. So I had to slow it down and have it go over here. I think it's still a thing that you need to, take people by the hand more, and also test it on people and see what works and what not. We released Mother of Pearl about 3 weeks ago, late March, and I think our challenge was actually communicating what the project exactly was, because this is basically the first time this is happening. And our initial goal was basically to bring two worlds or two fields that consider themselves a part of the metaverse, so-called, together in a way that hasn't been done before. Because you see digital fashion and it's calling itself a metaverse, a metaverse thing. And then you see VR, and obviously this claims to be a metaverse thing, but you never see fashion presented in VR. And the funny thing is that the way people interact with digital fashion is through flat screens. So there are garments, they're fully digital, and VR is the only way to actually see them in real scale and with a sense of presence. So we felt this is perfect. We gotta make sure we put those two worlds together in a way that complements. Still, those two fields are pretty. Their audience is pretty minimal. I'm sure everyone here knows that when you release an experience and you want all your friends and family to view it, then you have to bring it to them, because not too many people still VR headsets. And then Same thing goes to digital fashion. Not a lot of people understand what that even means, how it looks, and why. And so we released the project with the notion that we will have to give a lot of explanations. And we needed to not only be creators, but also be educators. And we need to make sure that this project is communicated well enough. So this collaboration was a joy and so inspirational, and that really throughout it really made me think of like what we can continue with to do with Albert in the future. I think this definitely is a beginning of a bigger opportunity, and we think of different ways to make this one the beginning of Albert as its own entity and its own character in the metaverse, and to consider other collaborations that this is just some kind of like a prototype for. So I just wanted to close with that, and thank you everyone for joining in today. It was a pleasure.
Thanks so much, Jonathan and Roy. This was like super interesting, and it's a new way you're using Quill and VR as a new medium. I think this is like the first animated 6DoF marketing campaign that I've ever seen, which is like really, really cool. Well, I have a question. So you were saying, you buy the garments and then you send the picture. Like, how do you currently do this? Is there any guidelines in terms of like, can it be any random photo, or do you give the person who bought the garment also like some guidance in terms of this is how you're supposed to pose, or, to basically showcase the garments the best way possible?
It's a super good question. I would say there is a very general guidelines of how you should do that. I mean, most of the time, if you have a very long hair, it's very good to put it backward, that it will not be on the background. But and it's very good to make sure that the lights are very good and not very contrast or not very dark. But in general, today we can address everyone, no matter which pose. But from my personal perspective, when I'm doing that for customers, or when we're doing it for influencer or celebrities, most of the time you need to be very creative person, because when you pick the garments, for example, if they have a really big volume sleeves, you don't want your hands necessarily to be very close to your body, because you need somehow to imagine that you're wearing this garment. So that's the most important guideline, I will say. Everything around it is very possible. You can do it in different ways, and it's amazing the results that you can actually get.
So the approach is, so you have somebody posing, right? Like some pose like that, and they send you the image, and then you will recreate that pose with a 3D mannequin or something, and then put the garment on, and then you render it with a similar type of lighting, right?
Yeah, I mean, you need to adjust the lights. You need to, of course, changing the garment pose, and to be very, very precise to make sure that the pose is the same pose of your customers. I would say, I don't know who from the people that listen to us know how to sew to create fit, but it's basically to create fitting on a picture.
That's fine.
And that's for me, the craftsmanship that I'm so felt in love when I go to learn fashion. I actually doing fitting in a picture, and it's amazing the result that you can get and how realistic it can actually look like, even on a dog, as you saw. I mean, it's super cute, and it's
Why didn't we get to animate the dog outfit?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Next time, or we'll
in the next collection,
a Mother of Pearl special.
That's super interesting. I find it like super interesting. Like first, of course, like I was like, what, digital fashion? Like you just get a photo, but like hearing your perspective, it kind of makes sense, because you want to show off your fashion, and these days you just do that on Instagram, right? Like this is like my outfit, and then that's what people see, because millions of people won't see you, but they will see you on Instagram, right? So I can definitely see the value there. So is the idea, so when you own the garment, when you buy, for example, one of this collection, right, from Mother of Pearl, then you own the garment in terms of, is it kind of like an NFT type of thing, or is it more like you paid for it so it's stored in your account on Placebo? How does it work?
So basically, it's a very, very good question, because there is a lot of talk around NFT, but basically there is two different paths. One of them is the CGI path, that you can actually buy a garment, but you buy the picture. You don't necessarily buy the garment. But in the other hand, I will give an example. When you buy the CGI picture, you're sending one picture and you get it back. So you're getting one picture. But when you buy, for example, we just took part in Decentraland Fashion Week. I don't know who heard that there was an event like this, and we took part and we created a fashion show with Dolce & Gabbana. There was a lot, Tommy Hilfiger, there was a lot of brands that went into the Metaverse Fashion Week. And over there, we actually launched an NFT, so your avatar can wear a Placebo garment. And it was such an interesting experience, because we had a cocktail party in Decentraland that you met all the designers. And after so much work with my team, I realized that I don't have anything to wear. And I was like, no. This is not going to happen. My avatar is not going to go basic. And it was very important for me. So important that I even say, if I will not have anything to wear, I'm not going to this party. It's so embarrassing. And I actually, because I have like the NFT, so I wear one of the Placebo garments. But it's so important how you represent yourself through digital platform, through social media. And digital fashion give you an access to those looks that every time when you see runway pictures, you say like Mugler or Jean-Paul Gaultier, those drama things that you were saying no one will ever wear with it. And suddenly in the metaverse, you say, you know what? I can go with it. I can rock it in the metaverse, because everything is possible over there. And I will say one more thing. When we're talking about gaming in those areas, some of the designers over there always struggle when it's come to fashion, because they don't have the education. They're very good in modeling the avatar. They're very good in creating the environment. When it's come to the garment, especially when it's come to women, to the female characters, it's very, very hard for them to understand how to work with the body. And that's why we're giving this service to gaming studios and to fashion houses, and help them to create digital fashion in the best way.
Oh, that's super cool. So right now, the way it would be like you're buying that picture. So if you want to have another pose, would you have to pay the same amount to get the same garment, or would there be like a discount, or like how does that work?
You pay for one picture, but let's say that very soon you can actually buy something that related to Mother of Pearl to your avatar.
Okay. Yeah,
And
I mean,
then
then it's more something where, you know, it coexists in a parallel world. And yeah, I mean, that's a no-brainer that it scales towards that, right? Like yeah, but it's a very, very, very interesting concept. And I do understand now, you know, thanks for giving that insight, because having that craftsmanship from the actual traditional world matters a lot, right? Because yeah, like you say, anybody could model something and paste it on top of a body, but without the deep knowledge of how garments behave and how they fall in the draping and stuff like that, that's like a craft itself, right? So that you have to learn. So it's so interesting to me. Like, yeah, initially it was like, that's kind of a crazy idea, but I think in the digital age, it totally makes sense. So yeah, this is super cool.
I mean, personally, actually, in my perspective, the selling point was the next step beyond dressing people's pictures. I thought, you know, like when we are in diverse platform, and as Rory said, like you want to represent yourself in like the way you want to, in an exciting way, in a way that you relate to, then the digital fashion brands that emerge now and maybe now only do, you know, Photoshop pictures, they're gaining traction, and they're going to be the big players, the big brands in the metaverse. So that was one of the biggest reasons why I wanted to get into that space, because I think it's fascinating, and if we are, and I think that we are going to spend some crucial time in the metaverse in the near or far future, then we will have to be dressed in something. So
yeah, I think, you know, it's kind of like, it's interesting because like you want to be the first, right? You want to like before, you know, you don't want to be the one jumping on a bandwagon, you know, because I think that's what I love so much about this whole medium, not just for fashion in this case, but with Quill and animated stories and, you know, all the stuff we're doing here in the community is because like nobody has done that before, you know, nobody, like for example, our, you know, the Roxandra's Christmas challenge, for example, nobody has done that type of scale project in VR before, you know, and I feel like, you know, we will be the ones years from now saying, hey, remember when we did this back then, right? And I feel like VR is still in, you know, in its early stages, and then this seems to be with the digital fashion, it's even earlier, you know, but I think there's like so much potential in terms of how things can scale. So definitely, yeah, it sounds like it's something that can scale to infinite, right? Like infinite possibilities. Yeah. So this is just like a small step into that direction. The first step, just like when Quill first launched, you know, like it didn't even have animation and was the first step towards that future. And who knew that years later we have like Mother of Pearl, you know, like fully animated, connected to like a real fashion house. It's fascinating to see. It's really, really cool.
Yeah, we should all remember that we had, you know, the privilege to talk directly to Roy, because when he's the Alexander McQueen of digital fashion, no one's gonna have access to him. So
yeah.
Jonathan,
soak it up. Soak as fast while you can.
No, but I actually say something from my perspective about, because this is a very unique project that I didn't see before around digital fashion, like to take digital fashion and to implement that into a VR world. And I think it's so unique to see it, and definitely how Parade made it very like in an amazing way, because fashion in the end, when we talk about fashion, it's about character, it's about identity, and it's about a moment. I don't know what about you, all the people that listen, but sometimes when I'm walking like with my trench coat and shoes, and I think that I look fabulous, and I'm walking in the street, and I imagine completely something else of the way that I actually look like, because this is the magic of fashion. You are actually in a moment. You're creating a magical moment, even if it's not completely there, even if it's only in your head. It's a moment, beautiful moment. And when you put the headset on your eyes and you're going into this escapism place, this is even work on different senses that you didn't know before, and it's create the magical moment that you imagine even more powerful. And I think this is what make me felt in love with it and the potential of this project. So I think I hope we will see a bigger project when it comes to fashion and Quill, how they can merge together and bring something even bigger and bigger than this. And I think it's a really good start. And the way that Parade did it, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's absolutely, yeah. I mean, Mother of Pearl, and also seeing the fashion here, you know, it's like super inspiring. And also like kind of like I see parallels between what Parade did and what you guys are doing at Placebo, in terms of like this, you're creating this fantasy world of things where you utilize things that don't exist in reality, right? Gravity and stuff like that. So you can maybe have moving garments, and, you know, like it's infinitely scalable, maybe a screen that changes, or, you know, like pixel clothes and stuff like that. You can do all kinds of stuff, right? Like right now, everything is moving towards TikTok and Reels. You know, I could imagine that if you scale that up, it becomes more advanced tracking, and then you have animated garments and stuff like that. But at the same time, you have the VR side of it with Parade Animation and Jonathan, where you have like this imaginary world where also you can't recreate this in real life. So now you are in this space with a magnificent chorale, right? and you're seeing Yeah, that's like burned in my brain now for the rest of my life. But you see the
same.
placebos like creating the garments, and you create like this imaginary garment in an imaginary way, and then you are like surrounded by this fantasy world, and then there's a way to wear it in an imaginary world, right? So it's really, really cool. Like I like this angle a lot, you know. Like now I think about it more and more, you know, where before it felt a little bit foreign to me, that idea about digital fashion, you know, because on the surface it might feel like I don't understand this, you know, but now having this context, it totally makes sense, right? Like, especially if we move towards a world where the metaverse will exist in a parallel world, you definitely need some sort of representation. And we have like live examples for that with the Nintendo Mii's, with Animal Crossing and stuff like that, where you do really care about how you look. You know, you choose a specific way to represent yourself, like even VR chat and stuff, you know, and all that kind of stuff. Like, even if you go into like Gather Town that is Studio Cyro is using for, you know, their office, where you're like pixel characters, it's important that you look a certain way, right? Like, you never go with a generic. If you give the people options, they're gonna go with the options. And then the more unique you make the options, where you say, hey, this is exclusive to you because you purchased it, then you add value to it, right? Like it's digital, it's like data, but at the same time it's visual. And then people are like, where did you get this from? Oh, I bought this, you know, from Placebo, you know, and so can I have it? No, it's like you have to buy it, right? And then it's like you add a lot of value towards that, right? So yeah, absolutely interesting angle, and excited for this type of future. Really cool. Do we have any more questions from the group?
I just wanted to say that the project was absolutely gorgeous from start to finish. And thank you so much for sharing it with all of us. And it makes so much sense. I mean, I was thinking about it just now, you know, 'cause, like I used to play World of Warcraft, right? And there's probably most people who play it would spend so much time trying to collect these pieces of gear just for the way they looked. And I can see the same, I suppose, thought process uh, that would go into the metaverse as well. And like people do really, really care about that. And it's wonderful that you're using the power of the metaverse to create something so magical.
And also with that, all the fashion knowledge behind it, you know, I think that's what's so different from, you know, like what we're used to seeing. Because if you do game skins and stuff, I doubt that there's any fashion designers working on like armors for or bodysuits for, you know, World of Warcraft or Overwatch or something like that. You know, it's basically concept artists that design something cool. You know, it might still look cool, but I feel like you're adding a layer of depth towards that, where it could actually work. All that knowledge where the seams run and stuff, it's not random. It's not just a feeling, you know, it actually makes sense. So I think this is really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I think as animators too, like, you know, we have to design everything in the world. You know, we have to design the backgrounds, the environments, the characters, and we put on so many hats when we design. And a part of it is designing clothes for the characters. But then again, like knowing nothing about fashion, like, you know, as real education, we lack so much knowledge. We lack so much understanding. And, you know, I personally will never be pretentious enough to claim those skills and that knowledge to say that this garment that I designed as an animator is good enough. Same way, personally, I know that a lot of people would disagree with what I'm going to say right now, but the same way that as an animator, I'm not an expert actor. I'm not an actor. And acting is a craft that people, you know, master throughout like an entire lifetime. And I only do my best to, you know, create a performance in animation. But to me, I'll never reach the potential, like what actors actually do in live action. So I take it quite the same way.
All right, if there's not any more questions from the audience?
I think the only one I have, and it's more of a development question we were doing, how long were you cooking the kaleidoscope shot? Because I remember you handed it off to me. We were like, hey, here's a couple things, fix this up. Like, that was just snuck in there. And I was like, where did this come from? Like, this is what?
Yeah.
That blew my mind.
The tunnel at the end was actually like the whole idea. Basically, I came up with it at the very ending after I heard the music, because we had like 4 segments for the garment, and it was very clear, like, these are the segments. And then Daniel Markovich, all the credits to him, our composer, forever, did this like crazy climatic, music at the end. And I was like, the first time I heard the score, I was like, what am I gonna do with like this crazy music? Because like I need to match the visuals with that music. Like it can't be less intense than that. And then so I took that last part and I was like, okay, we gotta take it up a notch now. We gotta make it more climatic. And I basically wanted to solve a few things. 1, to create like a climatic ending. 2, to leave the stage behind for a second, because we always exist around the stage. And 3, I thought it would be really cool to bring those mannequins to life.
Yeah.
Because that didn't happen through the runway show. The mannequins are just still mannequins. So I thought like this climax can be almost like a dream sequence when, after you saw the whole show, you basically you're taken on an extra ride through the experience of what this collection brings. And yeah, just to end it on a really high note, I was myself really surprised when I first moved that spawn area from where you are through the runway show to the tunnel. Like when I first did that and clicked like play, I was like, it's really crazy when you're not ready for it. And I think that actually really works because you're still the whole time, so you don't expect anything like that. And then you're taken in, and let me tell you, like working on that tunnel was very jarring and very intense, and like playing the music back the whole day. But yeah, to answer your question, it was created in the last couple weeks of working on the project.
I have to say, man, like that sequence, like I can't imagine the whole thing without it. I feel like what you just said, that contrast from getting from that static viewing to like this sucked into that vortex feeling, like that. I mean, it was borderline nauseous, I have to say. I was like, oh, I'm getting a little bit of the cold sweats, right? But like I loved it though, like I don't care, like let me vomit, right? That's fine, like I wanted to experience it, because it was definitely like a whoa moment, and the last one is the craziest one, right? That's like super big, and I think really emphasizing that it is all digital and celebrating that it is sick stuff and stuff, I thought it was really successful, like that, especially that contrast. It's like a boom, you're like changing gears, and then with the flying mannequins and stuff, absolutely brilliant. So yeah, congrats on a fantastic piece. Really.
Thank you. Let me vomit is the best compliment.
Yeah, cool.
All right.
Man, this was super amazing. I'm glad that we were able to solve the little tech issues there, but we always make it work. Thank you so much for your time today and showcasing the making of Mother of Pearl and giving us a behind the scenes look into the fashion as well, Roy. So thanks, Jonathan. Thanks, Roy. and see you guys soon.
All right.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.